March 2021. Portland, Oregon. Sarah Mitchell was standing in her dead aunt's living room, holding a sledgehammer she'd just bought from Home Depot. The house smelled like mothballs and old newspapers. Dust particles floated in the afternoon sunlight, streaming through yellowed curtains that hadn't been opened in probably a decade. Her Aunt Eleanor had died 3 weeks ago at 89 years old. No husband, no children. Sarah was her only living relative, which meant Sarah inherited everything. This crumbling 1940s bungalow in a neighborhood that had seen better days and whatever was inside it. The lawyer had been clear. The house needs significant repairs. Honestly, you'd be lucky to get $200,000 for it as is. My advice: clear it out, do some basic fixes, and sell it fast. Sarah had taken a week off work to do exactly that. She was 34, working as a high school teacher, drowning in student loans, barely making rent on her studio apartment. This inheritance felt more like a burden than a blessing. But as she raised that sledgehammer to knock down a section of damaged wall in the hallway, she had no idea she was about to make a discovery that would change her life forever, a discovery that would turn this worthless house into a $14 million gold mine. But before I tell you what she found, you need to understand who Aunt Eleanor really was. Because nothing about this story makes sense without knowing the truth about the strange old woman who lived alone in this house for 47 years. Sarah hadn't been close to Aunt Eleanor. Nobody had. Eleanor was the family mystery, the relative people whispered about at Thanksgiving but never invited over. Sarah's mother, Eleanor's younger sister, had died when Sarah was 16. After that, contact with Aunt Eleanor became even more rare. A Christmas card every few years. That was it. What Sarah knew about her aunt could fit on an index card. Born in 1932. Never married. Worked as a secretary at some company downtown from the 1950s until she retired in 1997. Lived in the same house since 1974. Became a recluse in her later years. The neighborhood kids called her house the witch's cottage. Not because Eleanor was mean, but because she was invisible. No one ever saw her leave. Groceries were delivered. The yard was overgrown. The paint was peeling. It was the house everyone walked past quickly. When the hospice nurse called to say Eleanor had passed away peacefully in her sleep, Sarah's first emotion was guilt. She should have visited more. Should have checked on her. Her second emotion was overwhelm. Because now she had to deal with this house. The first time Sarah walked through the property after Eleanor's death, she was shocked by what she found inside. Not because it was fancy, but because it was frozen in time. The furniture looked like it came from a 1960s Sears catalog. Floral wallpaper, brown shag carpet, avocado green appliances in the kitchen. But everything was obsessively organized, books arranged by height on shelves. Canned goods in the pantry lined up with labels facing forward. Clothes in the closet organized by color, then by sleeve length. This wasn't hoarding. It was the opposite. Everything had a place. Everything was precise. The living room had one chair, positioned to face a small television. No couch. No coffee table. Just one chair, one TV, one life. Sarah felt a wave of sadness. Her aunt had lived here alone for nearly half a century. What kind of life was that? She spent the first 2 days just going through papers. Bills paid meticulously on time, filed by year. Tax returns dating back to 1974, perfectly organized. Bank statements showing a modest savings account. Nothing remarkable. Then she started on the physical stuff. Clothes that hadn't been worn in decades, donated. Old magazines, recycled. Kitchen items, boxed up for Goodwill. By day 3, she was making real progress. The house was starting to empty out. That's when she noticed the wall. The hallway between the bedroom and bathroom had this weird bulge in it. The wallpaper was bubbling. The drywall underneath looked water-damaged and soft. Sarah pressed on it. Her hand went right through. "Great," she muttered. "Now I need to fix walls too." She went to Home Depot, bought a sledgehammer, some drywall, basic tools. Figured she'd knock out the damaged section and patch it before showing the house to realtors. She put on safety glasses, raised the sledgehammer, and swung. The damaged drywall crumbled easily. Dust exploded into the air. She waved it away, coughing. Then she froze. Behind the wall, in the space between the studs, were stacks of something. She dropped the sledgehammer and pulled out her phone, turning on the flashlight. Stacks and stacks of paper? No, not paper, money. Bundles of cash. wrapped in rubber bands that had deteriorated with age, stuffed into the wall cavity. Sarah's hands were shaking as she reached in and pulled out the first bundle. Old bills. $20 bills, $50 bills, $100 bills. The rubber band crumbled as she touched it. She pulled out another bundle. And another. And another. There must have been 40 or 50 bundles stuffed into just this one section of wall. Her heart was hammering. She sat down hard on the dusty floor, staring at the pile of cash in front of her. What the hell? She started counting. Lost track. Started again. Her hands were shaking so badly, she could barely hold the bills. When she finally finished counting the money from just that one wall cavity, the total was $47,000.47,000. Hidden in a wall. Sarah's mind was racing. Why would Aunt Eleanor hide money in the walls? Was this legal? Should she report it? Could she keep it? Then another thought hit her. If she hid money in this wall, what about the other walls? Sarah stood up, her teacher salary suddenly feeling very small compared to what might be hiding inside this house. She walked slowly through the hallway, examining every wall, every surface, looking for more bulges, more damage, more signs of hiding spots. The bathroom wall had a similar bubble in the drywall. Sarah grabbed the sledgehammer. 3 swings later, she was pulling out more bundles of cash. Another $38,000. The bedroom. A section of wall behind the dresser that looked slightly different than the others. She moved the heavy dresser, swung the hammer. More money. This time $52,000. By the time the sun set that evening, Sarah had found 8 different hiding spots in the walls. She'd stopped counting after $200,000. The living room floor was covered in piles of cash, organized by denomination, because even in her state of shock, her aunt's organizational system had rubbed off on her. She called in sick to work the next day. There was no way she could teach algebra while this was happening. She continued her search, more methodically now, tapping on walls, listening for hollow sounds, checking behind built-in shelves, under floorboards. In the kitchen, behind a false back panel in a cabinet, she found another stash. This one was different though. Along with the cash, there were envelopes. Sarah opened the first envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, dated 1962, addressed to Ellie from someone named James. A love letter. She opened another envelope. More letters. All from James. All addressed to Ellie. All dated between 1960 and 1964. The letters told a story. James and Eleanor were engaged. He was in the Navy, stationed overseas. They were going to get married when he returned. The letters were full of love, plans for their future, dreams of the life they'd build together. Then the letters stopped. The last one was dated November 1964. Sarah found a newspaper clipping tucked into the final envelope. An obituary. James Thornton, 28, killed in action. Vietnam. Suddenly, Aunt Eleanor's lonely life made horrible, tragic sense. She'd lost the love of her life. And then she just stopped living. Went through the motions for 57 years, but never really lived again. Sarah sat on the kitchen floor and cried for an aunt she'd never really known. But the question remained, where did all this money come from? Sarah spent day 4 digging through Eleanor's papers with new purpose. There had to be an explanation. She found it in a box of employment records in the basement. Eleanor hadn't just been some secretary. She'd been a secretary at a law firm, a very successful law firm, and she'd worked there for 43 years. The pay stubs showed something interesting. Eleanor's salary had been modest, but she'd never spent money. No mortgage after 1989, the house was paid off. No car payments, she didn't drive. No credit cards. Her expenses were minimal. Every paycheck, for 43 years, she'd cashed it and saved most of it. But here's what Sarah couldn't figure out. Banks existed. Why hide cash in walls instead of earning interest in a savings account? Then she found a journal. Eleanor's handwriting, small and precise. The entry from 1974, the year she bought the house, explained everything. Moved into my house today. It's mine. All mine. No one can take it away. After James died, his family tried to take everything. They said we weren't married. I had no claim. The Navy death benefit, the life insurance, everything went to his parents. I learned then, never trust the system. Never trust anyone. Keep what's yours where only you can find it. The walls will keep my secrets safe. Eleanor had been burned once, badly. So she'd spent the next 47 years turning her house into a personal bank vault that no one could access, no one could steal from, no one could claim belonged to them. That IT was paranoid. It was sad. It was brilliant. That by day 5, Sarah had searched every single wall, floor, and ceiling of the house. The final count was staggering. $847,000 in cash. $847,000. Hidden in the walls of a house the lawyer said was worth maybe $200,000. Sarah was sitting on over $1 million total if she included the house value. But here's where the story takes another turn, because Sarah made a phone call that changed everything. She called a friend who worked at a bank. Not to deposit the money, not yet, but to ask a question. If someone found a large amount of old cash, how would you know if any of it was valuable to collectors? Her friend said, old bills? Serial numbers, printing errors, rare years. Some bills are worth way more than face value. You should talk to a currency expert before you deposit anything. Sarah found a rare currency dealer in Portland. She brought in a small sample, just a few bills from different stacks. The dealer, an elderly man named Mr. Chun, examined them under a magnifying glass. His expression changed as he looked closer. Where did you get these? My aunt's house. What? These aren't just old bills. Some of these are from the 1950s and 60s. Uncirculated condition. Do you have more? Maybe. Mr. Chin pulled out a reference book. Started looking up serial numbers. This $50 bill from 1963? With this serial number pattern? That's worth $800 to collectors. Not $50. $800. He examined another bill. This 100 from 1950. See this printing error here? The serial number is slightly misaligned. Bills with errors like this can be worth $2,000 or more to the right collector. Sarah felt dizzy. I need to see everything you have, Mr. Chin said. Over the next 3 days, Mr. Chun came to Eleanor's house with an assistant. They examined every single bill Sarah had found. The final assessment was unbelievable. Out of the $847,000 in cash, approximately $680,000 was worth face value. But the remaining bills, approximately 4,000 individual bills, had collector value. Some were rare dates. Some had printing errors. Some had unusual serial numbers. Some were just in pristine, uncirculated condition and from sought-after years. The total collector value of those 4,000 bills, $13.20 million. $13 million. Sarah literally had to sit down. Mr. Chun handed her a glass of water. Your aunt, he said quietly, was sitting on one of the most significant private currency collections I've ever seen. And she probably had no idea. Eleanor had just been saving money, hiding it, preserving it, for 43 years, never knowing that her obsessive preservation and organization had created something priceless. Mr. Chin offered to broker the sale of the collection to serious collectors and museums. His commission would be 10%, but he'd guarantee every bill was authenticated and sold for maximum value. Sarah agreed. What choice did she have? She was a high school teacher. She didn't know anything about rare currency. The process took 6 months. Bills were authenticated, graded, cataloged. Some went to museums. Some went to private collectors. Some went to auction houses where they sold for astronomical prices to competitive bidders. When everything was finalized, after Mr. Chin's commission, after taxes, Sarah cleared $9.40 million. $9.4 million. From a house everyone thought was worthless. From an aunt nobody visited. From walls nobody suspected held anything but insulation. Sarah quit her teaching job, but not forever. She took a year off to process everything. She bought a modest house, paid off her student loans, set up a trust fund, invested wisely. She also did something else. She donated $500,000 to veterans organizations in James Thornton's name. She found his grave and placed flowers there. She made sure his sacrifice was honored. She kept Eleanor's letters from James, had them professionally preserved. She wrote Eleanor's story, the real story, and self-published a small book about it. Not for fame, but so people would know that the witch who lived alone in that house had been a woman who loved deeply, lost everything, and still managed to save a fortune through pure discipline and pain. A year later, Sarah went back to teaching, but only part-time. She spent the rest of her time working with elderly people who lived alone, making sure they weren't forgotten like Eleanor was. The house sold for $280,000 after repairs. Sarah didn't care about that money. It was pocket change compared to what she'd found inside. But here's the thing that haunts Sarah to this day. She almost didn't buy that sledgehammer. She almost just hired a contractor to do the repairs. She almost never found any of it. The lawyer had told her to sell it as is. If she'd listened, someone else would have bought the house, done renovations, found the money, and kept it all. Eleanor's lifetime of savings would have gone to a random house flipper. But Sarah had wanted to save money by doing some work herself. That one decision to buy a $25 sledgehammer led to finding $13 million. Sometimes luck isn't about winning the lottery. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right moment, making the right choice without knowing it matters. Sarah swung a sledgehammer at a damaged wall because she wanted to save a few $100s on repairs, and that swing changed her life forever. But the story doesn't end there, because after Sarah's story got out, after local news picked it up, then national news, then viral internet stories, something interesting started happening. Other people started checking their inherited houses more carefully. And you would not believe what they found. A man in Ohio found $90,000 in gold coins in a false bottom drawer. A woman in Michigan found stock certificates from the 1930s that were worth $300,000. Another family in Texas found rare comic books sealed in plastic in a basement wall, worth over $400,000. It turns out, Eleanor wasn't the only person from that generation who didn't trust banks. Turns out, a lot of old houses are hiding secrets in their walls, but Sarah's find remains the biggest. $13 million in rare currency, hidden by a heartbroken secretary who just wanted to keep her money safe. The house has new owners now, a young couple with 2 kids. Sarah met them at the closing. She almost told them the whole story, then decided against it. Let them make new memories. Let the house be happy again. But she did leave them a note, tucked into the welcome basket she gave them. It said, "This house holds stories. Be kind to it. You never know what gifts it might give you in return." When people ask Sarah what she learned from all this, she always says the same thing. Pay attention to the people in your life, especially the quiet ones. Visit your elderly relatives. Ask them questions. Learn their stories before it's too late. Because my biggest regret isn't that I almost missed the money. It's that I missed knowing Eleanor. I inherited her fortune, but I'll never get back the chance to know the woman who built it. Eleanor died alone, but her story didn't, and neither did her legacy. Because of what Eleanor saved, Sarah now helps elderly people who live alone. She funds programs that connect isolated seniors with volunteers. She makes sure people like her aunt aren't forgotten. The money was life-changing. But the lesson was even more valuable. Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't hidden in walls. They're in the people we overlook. Sarah learned that lesson the hard way. Through a sledgehammer, a pile of cash, and a lifetime of regret for dinners she never shared with an aunt who deserved to be known. Don't make the same mistake. Call your elderly relatives. Visit them. Ask about their lives. You might not find $13 million, but you might find something worth even more. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share incredible true stories of luck, loss, and life-changing moments every week. Drop a comment below telling us, what's the most unexpected thing you've ever found? And if you have an elderly relative you've been meaning to call, this is your sign. Do it today, because tomorrow might be too late, and unlike Sarah, you might not get a second chance to learn their story. Subscribe now, and I'll see you in the next video where I'll share another unbelievable true story that will make you see life differently.